All right, for our next topic today, we wanted to discuss we've seen these recent allegations, accusations against Jay-Z, rape accusations. The accusations are that he and Diddy were involved in a rape of a 13-year-old, and which is pretty serious allegation, and there's a lawsuit behind it and so forth. And now, understanding that it's very difficult in situations like this to really know what is true and what is false, particularly at this initial stage where anybody can make any accusation and file a lawsuit. So and then anybody can deny anything. There's no connection to what's true and what's not at this stage as far as what we've seen reported. But setting that aside, one thing that is of note in this instance is Jay-Z has had a very, very, very aggressive and strong response to the accusations and the lawsuit. And so I wanted to ask you, obviously you whatever comments needed as far as the allegations and what he's been accused of in this civil lawsuit. It's not a criminal lawsuit, but a civil lawsuit. So, setting aside, or if you commenting on that to the extent you need to, but also what do you think as far as the way Jay-Z has strongly pushed back against the allegations, including, going at the lawyer who is, who filed the case and everything like that, the aggressiveness of his pushback has been not something that we see all the time with things like this.
Yeah. I mean, he, maybe he saw, someone win their second election and realize, hey, you better fight like hell. Like it works.
That's the right approach.
I was going to say.
Taking notes.
Yeah, that's my compliment over there. It's like, hey, that works. Obviously, people respond to boldness and to, the ability to really push back, to show people that you're not going to be pushed around, or at least that, you're willing to stand up for yourself. And I think there's something kind of primal and subconscious when we all see someone do that.
To fully frame that, when you hear PR traditionally, you go back 30, 40 years, or just kind of this traditional PR was kind of like, no comment stuff like this, or you just deny, but not necessarily aggressively, pushing back, and not to give oxygen to the story, or all of the different reasons that PR people have kind of taken that approach kind of traditionally. But as you've seen, you're talking about, you're correct. We've seen a different approach in recent years, recent decades, I guess, just recently for some people when accusations like this come out, to really, really go back hard, which is in contrast to kind of that traditional advice, but has proven, at least in some cases, to be effective in shaping the narrative.
Well, I also think it depends who the messenger is. I mean, Jay-Z specifically, more than many others of his type of fame, has been a very quiet guy who's a public figure. I mean, he doesn't sit there and all over social media all the time. He doesn't do a lot of interviews. So I do think it's like Michael Jordan. I remember when that guy Donald Sterling owned the Clippers and all that racist stuff came out.
Yeah.
And it wasn't sure what they were going to do with him, or they're going to make him sell the team or not. And I remember it was a Sunday afternoon and Michael Jordan made a statement that he had to go. And I remember saying to myself, that guy's done. Meaning Donald Sterling, because I just thought Michael Jordan is always quiet. And so when he spoke, it was like, whoa, okay, now we got to take this. And I feel like
either that or he had already read the room and saw that it was happening. And so either way, it wasn't, once Michael Jordan did it, you knew that the level of controversy as far as pushing him out was going to be reduced. It's and
that's what
chicken
I'm saying,
and egg.
But it's like, I feel like it's a similar thing, obviously different topic, but like Jay-Z's always quiet. He doesn't usually, the public usually doesn't hear directly from him. So to hear from him in this bold manner, I think is a good strategy if you want to talk about the strategic way to deal with it, because it kind of wakes everyone up. Say, oh, man, he's pretty strong. I wonder, is this real? And the other thing is, I mean, look, I don't want to comment on the actual allegation in too much detail because, look, we don't know. That's my attitude. If it's true, it's disgusting, clearly. And if it's not true, it's not true, right? And so I'm not going to sit here and try and debate that. Now, I do find it interesting, and this is not to knock the alleged victim, but I mean, I think this is why we also have a statute of limitations, right? Because we're over here having to argue and rehash something that happened almost 25 years ago. In terms of not me and you personally, but meaning the court of law, people got to go back and dig up witnesses and stuff. And I mean, the accuracy of that stuff I would think can be called into question. And I'm not going to, again, I want to be very clear. Anyone who's been a victim of sexual assault, I think their memory will be pretty clear for the rest of their life, whether it's 50 years, 25 years, or whatever. So if this really happened, I'm not saying that this girl's memory changed. I'm just making the point that chauffeurs, of the limo drivers, the security people, all those people, man, 25 years is a long time. And so to be trying to have a serious case and bring something serious like this to the floor 25 years later, I'm not saying that if the young lady doesn't have a right. I'm just saying that, to me, this is why we have the statute of limitations, because it's hard to go back and start prosecuting stuff that happened so long ago that
like
people might not even be alive anymore.
Also witness availability, but also reliability of memory is affected by time. Even, of anybody. That's kind of, and again, I'm not saying that specifically about any person, but yes, that's always difficult for me, as well. Is just when time goes by, it's just like I don't trust my own memories to be like a computer memory 30 years or 20 years ago. Like I know that my own memories are clouded by my experience, and stuff like that. And how I remember things kind of evolves versus if I watched a video of it, like that recorded it exactly how it happened. And so that's risky, it's risky. But like you said, trauma, we know that can do different things with the memory, and that can make it more reliable, that can make it less reliable, but like it can do different things. And so it's unfortunate, I think, for everyone, when it comes out much later, because it becomes harder to get to the truth of it. Because if it's true, then we as a society need to do something about it. And if it's not true, then it's going to be harder for the person who's the victim of a allegation that's not true to prove themselves to disprove it. So it makes it's just harder on everybody involved. What's interesting to me about this also, like you said, it depends on who you are in terms of whether or not the strategy of pushing back aggressive can work for you in a situation like this. This also reminds me of kind of when Diddy, because Diddy is part of this accusation as well. And when Diddy first started getting hit with these types of things, before the grand reckoning he's had, over the past year or so, he would usually respond back very aggressively as well. But now he doesn't do that anymore. And so it's almost like now that he's been tainted to a certain degree, his PR team or his like it doesn't even make any sense. Like people could opportunistically come after him now, so to speak, because it's like nobody's going to believe him if he comes back super strong anyway. Like he's in a state where he's lost all of his credibility because of how hard he came out and because of what's been shown, what the videos that have come out and all this other types of stuff. And baby oil jokes and everything like that. So he's not going to come out like that. What's interesting though, so you take that in, but then it's like, okay, so it's interesting to me that she has this allegation that includes Diddy, but also ropes in Jay-Z, because she would have very little resistance relatively if initially the other the people being accused, it was just Diddy and the other people were their names weren't released. And so I think there were two other people and their names weren't released. And so when Jay-Z's name gets tied to it, then it's like, okay, yeah, you're bringing all of the blowback now, because his reputation is such that he does have a lot to lose, one, and then a lot to gain by trying to shape the narrative as quickly as possible and not have the accuser shape the narrative as quickly as possible. So it's just all of these kind of these, and I should say this, to your point, there is that boldness piece. So it's all these things of trying to manipulate the court of public opinion.
Yeah.
And again, not getting into whether it's true or not, because again, I firmly believe that we won't find out whether this is true or not. Like this is going to be an issue of she may be able to prevail in court. She may get a settlement, or he may be able to prevail in court. But whether it actually happened or not, I think is one of the least relevant things that's happening now. And that's the unfortunateness about when you wait that long. Again, if it happened, I hope that she's able to get some redress from this. If it didn't happen, I hope that he's able to get his name cleared. But we just aren't going to really find out too much this late in the game about whether it happened, most likely. If we do, then great. Yeah. And so that's the unfortunate piece about it.
Well, and it's interesting because, as you said about how the young lady accused Diddy and then brings in Jay-Z, it reminds me of that young lady. I remember her first name was Virginia.
I don't want to say it as if. Let me clarify. I'm not saying as if she later on decided to name him as well. Like I think that the way it was set up is that Diddy was named publicly, his name was released publicly at first. Other names weren't released publicly. Like all of the subjects their names
I
didn't
get
all
it,
get
but
released at the same
that's where I'm
time.
kind of going. Is it
Yeah.
reminds me of that young lady, Virginia Griffith. I can't pronounce her last name. It starts with a G. She was the one in that famous picture with Prince Andrew when she was 17 at Jeffrey Epstein's place. Because she accused Jeffrey Epstein first, but it was interesting that she also pointed at Alan Dershowitz, and that was one that made me go, "Oh, that's interesting," you know. And I think like the Jay-Z one is kind of like, all right. Sometimes, like we know that these men at a certain level of wealth in certain cultures flock together, right? Meaning like Dershowitz and Epstein are kind of New York, Wall Street, law and finance types and wealthy guys that party together. And Jay-Z and Diddy are hip hop guys and wealthy guys that party together. And you're right. It's and that's why I wanted to ask your question, because in reading about this, I read that the attorney who brought the suit for this young lady against Jay-Z is representing over 100 people that say they're victims of Diddy. And so, again, for me, I'm thinking, okay, that shouldn't matter. But like you said about this court of public opinion, I'm thinking, okay, well, is this guy just taking in anybody and throwing spaghetti against the wall to see what sticks? Meaning out of 100 cases, maybe, a dozen of them are serious that really did get hurt by Diddy. And maybe, another dozen are people that maybe were in the orbit. And then the rest are people just
Well, it calls into question. It calls into question how he's vetting them. Because it's like, okay, maybe he, for all we know, these are the 100 that came up to him, or for all we know, maybe 400 people came up to him, and 100 of them are the ones he accepted. And so we don't have that information to be able to evaluate him. Now, this is also the same attorney, this Busby guy from Houston, that represented a lot of the women that accused Deshaun Watson, he was the quarterback of the Houston Texans at the time.
Yeah.
Now he's a quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. But and all with the guy that would always try to turn massages into happy endings with massage professionals, not with people who were sex workers. So and so like. He has, I don't know if he gets credibility because of that. Just because of the people that he was bringing there, like he was vetting people supposedly there and so forth. But yes, it all is about like this is a whole wrestling match about the court of public opinion. Like what's going to happen in the legal case is severely hamstrung by the time that it took for this to come out.
Exactly.
And so, it's going to be about, okay, well, everybody's trying to manage this case in the public opinion, and what's going to happen? We don't know. One of the things I'll mention, though, and this is not to undermine the accuser. This is not to undermine the accused. I think the sexual assault thing, particularly, like the social baggage we bring into it, makes us in the public opinion, like us people giving our public opinion. I think that we're really handicapped when it comes to these, because so much who gets accused. Really, we make a lot of conclusions based on that in all of these cases. And like, I think the Duke lacrosse case, which was in the news recently, but there was the accusations, there were some dancers that the Duke lacrosse players had at a party. And then these dancers after the fact, these are black ladies after the fact, and these are white lacrosse players. They came out and said they were assaulted and this is a big deal and everything like that. And then recently, one of the dancers said, yeah, I made it up, but I remember at that time, people were lining up on the accusations of who they believed and what they, who they were pulling for, so to speak, based on the identity of the people that were either the accusers, like, oh, these privileged white guys, yada yada yada. Or the accused, like, oh, these dancers, yada yada yada, like the black ladies that women of color, this and that. And so, like, it was really interesting to me looking at that in hindsight now with this here. Because I think we all need to look in the mirror when it comes to this. Okay, yes, we are the court of public opinion. We're going to be judging all of these things that are happening that are really unknowable to us based on, we're not going to be judging it based on the accusations themselves and how plausible this sounds, how plausible that doesn't sound. Because really, that's difficult to do. Like, the accusations don't really tell us enough to say, like, who this was, or whether this happened, who did it, and so forth. And so I just want the word of caution I give is that we're all going to bring our biases in as this court of public opinion. And we're most likely going to come down and start believing who we want to believe based on who they are, who they represent to us. Or do we want to believe Jay-Z, or do we want to believe that Jay-Z could be this monster operating with Diddy to do this terrible thing, And so it's just a word of caution.
And because as you bring it up, I actually, one of the best examples kind of in our recent cultural memory will be the Brett Kavanaugh hearings.
Yeah.
Because remember, the Supreme Court justice, and like you said, it's a very similar thing. We're talking about that the people that accused him of doing negative stuff with with a young lady who is now a grown woman, that happened when they were 17, and this guy was 53 when he's getting confirmed by the Senate for the Supreme Court. And I remember learning recently that so to finish that thought is people who watch Fox News, which I talked to, they were telling me, oh, he's a good man, he's getting unfairly persecuted. And then people I talked to that watch MSNBC or something like that would think he's a devil, like he's the worst thing ever. And you're right, it's that court of public opinion, and that's the importance of things like the media, because think about, like you said, the tape for Diddy is a big deal because that's when it was like, all right, no one can deny this. But if the media turns on Jay-Z, that'll shape public opinion more than if they don't, and that's kind of that fourth estate thing, the power of the influence of the media.
And that may be the lesson, so to speak, that Jay-Z is trying to take heed of, in terms of how other people have used, either you want to discredit the media in advance, or you want to try to prevent the media from turning against you. And so that may be kind of what his tactic is based on.
Well,
but nonetheless,
I was going to say Michael Jordan used to be very good at that, meaning kind of controlling the media from turning against him. And you're right, there's a bit of a skill with that give and take. But I just want to finish this about Kavanaugh. What also came out this year was that the Senate went ahead and kind of kept moving, knowing that there were 4,500 incoming calls to that hotline about Brett Kavanaugh being a sexual abuser. And it goes back to the 100 cases, and you made a very good point that this lawyer against Jay-Z, whether he just got 100 people and said, let's go, or if he had 500 or 600, and these are the 100 he picked because he vetted them properly. We don't know. Yeah. But my point is, it reminds me, though, because, look, whatever Brett Kavanaugh did or didn't do with the ladies when he was younger, I really think it's hard to believe that he sexually assaulted 4,500 individual people. So what I'm saying is that when these things
he
get into
quite prolific,
he would.
The Wilt Chamberlain of law students, And that's a terrible. I shouldn't make that joke. I shouldn't make that joke, but
you did. So anyway, we'll keep it. I'm not going to go to, but no. My point is just saying that it's we need to know that when these things get into the public eye, it doesn't take away from any victims of who really suffered from anybody, but meaning more people will come in because we got hundreds of millions of people in this country, and maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people are that mentally disturbed that they want all in on some kind of story like this. So I think that's what, again, makes this also more difficult when you're talking about cases like we're talking about that happened decades ago. Yeah. And then these are famous people who are in the public eye. The media is making a big deal. You're going to trigger some people that might not have a full deck of cards upstairs to also call in and be kind of like, I'm one of these too. And it makes it harder for everybody to get through it.
Or I saw that. Because again, it could be a lot of different things. It could be people saying what they saw or what they heard and things like that. And I'll say this, like this kind of ending point being that the thing is that to address the issue, to try to make things better moving forward, what we need to do is be focused on the now. And we got to try to make it so that situations are conducive to women when something happens for them to come out right away. Like, that's what we need to do. Like the women who, when they don't come out right away, it makes it more difficult for all of us, including them. But it's difficult, clearly, for them to come out right away. Or right next day, it doesn't have to be next day, but within the first month or so, like just relatively soon afterwards. We need to have a society that's sufficiently supportive of the women that will allow them to say something sooner. So at least we can figure out, we can get to the bottom of it. Like we're capable of it. Because when you come out 20 years later, I don't know that we're even capable of really getting to the bottom of it. And so, that hurts everyone, and so that I think is a place where we can try to do better as a society. When something happens, let's try to make a environment that's conducive for women to feel comfortable saying something, speaking up right away, and not being ashamed or not being afraid to where they hold it in for this amount of time. And then eventually when they come out, we have all these other issues that stand in the way of us either holding someone accountable or someone being able to exonerate themselves. So from there, I think we can wrap this.
I'll finish with this too. We need to do a better job holding the people in the orbit that I would call the scaffolding of these type of men as well, because I'm thinking now, R. Kelly, Jeffrey Epstein, Bill Cosby, it's been, it's evidence that all these guys had contacts in law enforcement that they were paying off. You know what I mean? And that they were getting tips from when their house was going to get raided, and all that stuff. So if we were serious about this, we would also be investigating who within the system helped these guys continue to do this to try and deter other people from helping wealthy guys get away with committing crimes, especially against young women. So, that's part of it too. It's not just these guys by themselves.
Yeah. Because that's what we have learned as well, is that they can't pull it off by themselves.
Yeah, so, for 20, 30 years, exactly.
Yeah. I think we can wrap this topic from there. Yep. And definitely check out part 1, part 2 of this today's discussion as well. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Call Like I See It. Subscribe to the podcast, rate it, review it, tell us what you think, send it to a friend. Until next time, I'm James Keys.
I am Tunde Ogunlana.
All right, we'll talk to you soon.